Welcome to the podcast postgame show after that memorable. We're not going to forget this. Anyone who cares about Ohio State, who cares about college football, who cares about Notre Dame is not going to forget this one. 17-14, the Buckeyes win on the last play of the game. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis to talk about it. We have 222 questions from texters lined up and ready to go. I don't know if we're going to get to them because we have to talk about this game, and I think we have to start at the end, Landis. And the end is Ryan Day's post-game interview on TV, where he immediately calls out Lou Holtz, who questioned the toughness of Ohio State and Ryan Day's program earlier, like on Friday. Ryan Day says, I can't believe Lou Holtz said that. Ryan Day drops an Ohio against the world. These kids are tough. He's getting fired up. What does that tell you about Ryan Day and Ohio State, that they win and he has these emotions absolutely bubbling over right away?
Man, what does it tell me? I guess in the end, right, you like it, right? In the end, you like it because it got them the win. I actually thought for 99.9% of that game, he did not channel that energy all that well, but that probably doesn't matter now that Ohio State wins 17-14. So I think if you're an Ohio State fan, like, you love it, right? You love your head coach cutting a wrestling promo at the end of the game against an 86-year-old former college football coach who said something, I think, like, rather, I don't know, mundane, or not mundane, but harmless about your team. Was he wrong? Ryan Day's team gets out physical sometimes in big games. They kind of got out physical today, but they won because they were the most physical team on the last play of the game. So whatever you need to do to bottle it up and get yourself over the top to win, I guess, is good. But I did think it was, because he's talked about it before the game. Like, I thought it was interesting that he grabbed onto that so much.
So there's a lot to talk about with where Ohio State is as a program. But I will say this. We like to start with what you liked about that. And this goes in the history books. A 15-play, 65-yard, minute and 25-second drive to win the game on the road in one of the most historic stadiums in college football in your fourth career start. And Kyle McCord engineers that drive. It's the drive that Ohio State couldn't put together against Georgia last year. They got the stop first, right after Notre Dame marches, scores the go-ahead touchdown. Ohio State can't answer. They get stopped on downs, but then they force the punt. JT Tuimoloau makes a great play on a screen to knock that down and save clock on an incomplete pass. But then this young kid, man, like, this is an all-timer, and we have to acknowledge what Kyle McCord did in that moment, because it's exactly what Ryan Day didn't want to do to a young, inexperienced quarterback. It's what he had talked about so often of, we can't put it all on Kyle, just the way they put it all on CJ Stroud at the end of the game against Oregon in week 2 in 2021. This is so similar to that. And Kyle McCord absolutely came through. And what it might do for him,
yeah, that's the thing,
propelling him, but also, man, this is one you tell the grandkids about.
Yeah, it no doubt is, for sure. It's very cool to see Kyle be able to do this, so early in his career. But that, all I can think about is what you said there. Like, what does this do for him now, moving forward? It has to be an incredible confidence booster. And, like, if you look at the totality of his game, I don't know that it blew you away. I thought he was fine. I thought he was solid. But man, he was steady, like, in key moments a lot, and he was ripping those balls to Emeka Egbuka on a few money downs, including on that last drive. I thought he showed a whole lot, and again, he wasn't perfect, but he was as good as he needed to be, and rose to the occasion in a way that we've just not seen this team do a lot the last few years when they were put in a situation like this. So I am very much interested now in where Kyle McCord goes from here, because it was all about Sam Hartman in his 900th career start. How much is that experience going to matter? And Sam Hartman played a fine game. He didn't blow me away either, but Kyle McCord was the one that had the ball in his hand with a chance to win it, and he did it.
Ohio State on that final drive converted a 3rd and 10 with a 23-yard throw, converted a 4th and 7 with a 7-yard throw, converted a 3rd and 19 with a 21-yard throw down to the 1-yard line to Emeka Egbuka. And if we're looking for extraordinary trait for Kyle McCord, and I think we are, and I think people were saying this is it, it's cool.
Yep.
It's calm. right? It's not a lot of times. So if you say sometimes for a guy it's arm, some with CJ Stroud often it was brain and accuracy. Sometimes it's legs. I think Kyle, it's blood, ice cold blood in the veins. He did not get rattled in the moment. And if he had gotten rattled, they lose. If he gets rattled, they lose.
Yep.
No doubt. Wasn't perfect, but was clutch. If he gets rattled, they lose.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect summation of it. And it was on the table, right? That was the study we were doing in this game, because I don't think we thought Sam Hartman was going to get rattled, right? It was whether or not Kyle McCord can match that, and he did. Like I thought they both played probably the game their teams needed them to play. And Kyle, should have had a touchdown earlier in the game when a really well thrown ball to Emeka Ibuka that was dropped in the end zone. He never looked phased. Like they got after him a little bit, not a ton. Like I give credit to the offensive line for protecting him, I think, really well in this game. But even when they got after him, like you saw enough movement in the pocket. You saw him get out a little bit and get 4 yards when it could have been a sack. Like poise. And that's the, talking with people about Kyle McCord sort of building up to his chance to become the starter. I think that's the thing you always heard about him, is like he does not get rattled all that much. He's just used to playing, I think, in important moments. And granted, it's high school and not college, but I still think that matters. And Ryan Day has not talked about, what Kyle McCord's extraordinary trait is. Maybe he'll do it after the game today, but I bet if you ask him, that's what he'll say.
Even the intentional grounding was a great play in its own right. I mean, it's a little bit of an Eli, like the guy has him and he breaks it and then has the wherewithal. I mean, it was close, right? He almost just made a great throwaway. So that moment, and that is so much of what football is. And there's a particular thing I want to say about the way Ohio State won this game, but how much of high level football anymore comes down to a final drive. And when we have the ball in our hands, do we believe in our quarterback and our guys to get it done? Or do we believe in our defense to get a stop? I don't know if Ohio State fans believed in the Ohio State offense coming into this game in that moment. But they got it done, and I think you believe in it now. But this is what high-level football is about. It's how Georgia beat Ohio State last year. And for Kyle McCord, I just don't. We're going to get to some other stuff, but this might be the beginning of something.
Yep.
That this is like, it's like right now we're kind of like, wow, Kyle McCord did that. We may down the line be like, well, what do you mean? Like, yeah, that was the beginning of Kyle McCord national champion, Kyle McCord Heisman winner, Kyle McCord first round draft pick, whatever. I feel like the Kyle McCord story started tonight.
Yeah, it did. I don't have much to add to that. I think you're right. It's just about now, and he strikes me as the kind of guy who's not just like, oh, that was cool, and then like sort of dismiss it. Like this is a tremendous confidence builder for a young quarterback, and Kyle strikes me as someone who's going to get the most out of that.
So then let me get to the second point here. So I would think most Ohio State fans believe this, and Ryan Day believes this, because he said it coming into the game. In an equal talent game, it doesn't matter how you win. It's not about style points. It's not about we have a high-flying offense. We're expected to score a lot. People thought it would be the over and it's the under, whatever. It's just that you win. The other thing about that, and this is going to sound negative, but I just think it's realistic. Ohio State isn't good enough right now for anyone to complain about this win should have been better. That they won. And I don't know how good Notre Dame is, but that they won is amazing, because this is not a perfect team that, I played down. This is a team that does have some issues that found a way. Now, you and I both picked, easier wins with higher scores. But this is not like a, clear the path to the national championship game. This is a team that's still finding its way. And on a road like that, this is an amazing landmark.
Yeah, I mean, you have to find a way to win these kind of games when you're flawed, and Ohio State has them. And like I hope that's okay to say. Like it's September and Ohio State has some new pieces. Of course they're flawed, and we probably all, and like myself included, got a little too far over our skis with what we saw last weekend against Western Kentucky. But like I wouldn't leave this thinking about all the ways that Ohio State needs to continue improving. Like those are real, they need to do it, but I also think it says something about a team to win games sort of in spite of that, and to see Ohio State do it, and like to get the yard right. Like it was like, oh god, they're going to come up a yard short. Like they could not get the yard they needed in this game for almost the entirety of it, and then they finally got the yard they needed with a heck of a run, I think, by Chip Trayanum on a play that some guys did get into the backfield. So to bear down and get it, I think you have to be happy with it. Like I'm not looking for style points with this team right now. There's a lot of things they need to get right if they want to get to where they want to get to, but to win games along the way against this caliber of opponent, I think matters.
The idea that they had failed at the goal line on 4th and 1, that they failed on a jet sweep at a very important point in the game when it felt like the game was on the line on 4th and 1, and that it comes down to 4th and 1 is crazy.
It's poetry. Yeah.
What do you want to write a poem about it? Do you have a poem? Have you composed?
I don't
Would
have.
you like me to sing a song about it?
Yeah, I can write a haiku about inside zone. Yeah.
What did you think about the final play call? And as you were trying, you're an X and O's guy. Were you trying to guess the play call, and what was your guess?
I thought they were going to run it on 4th and 1. Because obviously you don't or whatever. Was it 3rd and goal, 4th and goal? I can't remember. The play before, you can't run it there, right? Because you want to make sure you have 2 plays and you don't have any timeouts. But then once it's down, like it's 3 seconds left, you have 1 play left to run the football. Right. So I thought they were going to run it there. They got a good look to run into. They've put all the receivers out wide, and I think drew a lot of the defense's attention, had the defense set to the wide side of the field, and then ran it to the short side of the field. So I figured they would do that. I wasn't quite sure what they were going to do on the play before. I thought they might try to get big and throw a play action pass or something. But once they got to that last play, I was pretty sure they were just going to try to let Chip hammer it over the goal line.
Notre Dame only had 3 down linemen on that play, and they sort of didn't have like Josh Simmons didn't block anybody on that play as they ran left, and the left tackle didn't block anybody because there wasn't anybody to block.
Yeah.
And so there was, the defender on the edge was the one who made the tackle on Chip Trayanum. I mean, it's one of those things, right? You won, but you won by an inch. I mean, the ball landed on the goal line.
Yep.
And with the defender wrapped around Chip Trayanum's ankle. So, there's a little bit, Todd Blackledge was like, oh, what a brilliant play. And it's like, well, made it by an inch. So, I mean, it wasn't like he didn't storm into the end zone. It wasn't a wide open guy. I do think it was the right call in the moment. And it is amazing that Ryan Day immediately comes to the on-field post-game interview, and they said, like, what does this mean to you? And the first word he said is toughness. Yeah. Because this has been the central theme and discussion and Achilles heel and focus of the entire Ryan Day era. And so that it came down to this and they executed it by that much, but they executed it. You won the game doing it. And that he seized onto that. I don't even know what to make of it, but it is an amazing moment in the Ryan Day career and in the history of this version of Ohio State.
Can I Ryan Day's watching this, right? You think he's one of the 2,000 people who are watching this live right now? Okay, this is much just for Ryan Day. Ryan,
he'll play it on the plane.
I release you from the burden of having to prove your toughness. You've done it with a 1-yard run on the goal line on the last play of the game. You don't have to do it anymore. Just line up with all your playmakers, hang out in the shotgun, throw the thing around the yard, and stop hamstringing yourself by trying to prove a point that you were tough. You've done it. Congratulations.
No, but is that what this is? Or is this the singles hitter who hits a home run and is like, well, I'm swinging for the fences now. I hit a home run one time. It's like, is this going to be the thing of like, well, we ran it on 4th and 1 to win the game against Notre Dame. That's pounded into the line all the time.
Right.
So this is still a defining moment. This begins, I think it really began on the first drive of the Michigan game, the second half of the Michigan game in 2021, when Travion Henderson is stopped on 3rd and 2 in a toss-up game at that point. Ohio State has to punt. Michigan takes over and drives right down the field and takes the lead and takes over the game at that point. And I feel like it has been the continuing discussion. And I feel like they are still trapped in it. I feel like they are trapped in this discussion. And I think the play calls, the short yardage play calls showed us that. And I think that it stuck in Ryan Day's craw that Lou Holtz said it, shows us that. And I don't honestly know how they should escape it. Now, because I don't think they escaped it. They just won.
Yeah.
They made the play they had to make. The true amazing part of this game is the drive itself, is Kyle McCord. And guess what the amazing parts of that drive are? The throws. Right?
Yeah.
That's what's amazing. The amazing thing really is not the 4th and 1 play, because Notre Dame kind of lined up wrong and they barely made it. They made it.
Yeah.
But they got set up for it because Emeka practically scored on the throw. They looked at their best when Kyle was ripping stuff in the middle of the field to Emeka Egbuka. That was the best thing they did tonight. So I hope you seize that. Right, seize that and take that with you.
Yeah, you would hope that would plant a seed in Ryan Day's head. It's a good point, right? Maybe the opposite of what I'm saying will actually happen, and now they think they're like, I don't know, Barry Alvarez, Wisconsin. Yeah. I hope that's not the case. The fact that they had to run it in from the 1 yard line to win the game, and they didn't line up in 44 personnel and try to ram it down Notre Dame's throat. Like, they got into the shotgun, they put everybody out wide and just sort of ran it up the middle with the one running back. Like, that's a good sign to me. I think like they overcomplicate their short yardage situation a lot by trying to get big and prove a point and throw play action, when like, even if you're not going to throw the ball to your playmakers, you can still use them to create space in moments like that. And they did that on that play.
It's an amazing win for Ohio State. Winning is better than losing.
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you just have to win. And I do think, right, since I started covering Ohio State, like, does that beat Bama has been, I think, the defining way of analyzing this team. But I don't think that applies in top 10 games, especially on the road, right? Like, that's not what this is about. It's about, and I do agree with Ryan Day with that, because I think like he hammers that. Like, what are we doing? Are we seriously we're gonna criticize the win, this kind of win? So we can say, here's a moment where they needed to do this better. Here's a moment when they needed to do this better.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that I'm trying to like learn a ton, because what's popping up is not new, right?
Right.
But I've told the story a million times. The very first game I covering Ohio State was the second game in 2005, the loss to Texas. And it's like, I don't know, would anybody in that moment have been like, well, you only beat Texas by 2. It's like, would you have taken that? Would you have taken catching the ball in the end zone, right, when you make a play? So like that kind of thing. Do you think this? So we mostly have to appreciate this for what it is, which is a win. But how do you think it propels? Does it make them a better team this year or not? Is it just sort of like, it is what it is? Great win. You stay alive. You have more wiggle room if you do lose later. Or does this engender something in them that they needed?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Because they won. It was not similar fashion last year. They won a kind of a slugfest, low scoring game against Notre Dame last year, and a lot of the talking points after that was like, well, they wouldn't have won that game a year ago. Like, good for them for toughing it out and winning a game. This is not the same thing. This is more difficult. Frankly, it was on the road, and they like literally had to win it in the last play of the game. But that Notre Dame win last year did not necessarily build into something. The issues were the issues kind of for the entire year. So I don't want to assume that this fixes stuff for them or gets them going on the right path when they clearly do have things to address on both sides of the ball. But what this means for the quarterback, I think can perhaps push a lot of that aside. Like, if you are now living in a world where Kyle McCord like believes he is a guy who can do this for Ohio State, can operate in moments like that against a good team on the road and get a win, and that propels him to something better than maybe he would have been in the middle of October had he not done that, then I think that is something different than what Ohio State had to build off of last year. So I think that is a key piece of this. Does it, they got to figure out how to get offenses off the field on defense. They got to figure out, what they're going to do in short yardage, because those moments are going to arise again. Their offensive line in generally has to be better at run blocking. There are a lot of things there, but I do think that this can, like, just the nature of it, right? That a walk-off win, I do think can snowball in a good way for you.
So this was a conversation leading into the game. I know we talked about it. I'm always on Fridays with Bo Bishop on 97.1 The Fan, and he said he thought this game mattered more for Marcus Freeman because, like, Notre Dame needs to get over the top. And I was like, no, I think Notre Dame is still ascending. And I think, like, this kind of game for Notre Dame, I don't know that I would doubt that Notre Dame fans are walking away saying, like, how dare Marcus Freeman lose that game. Now there is a Notre Dame analytics site a guy that I follow on Twitter who thought they turtled at the end and did not have good play calling and that it cost them the game by actually kind of playing not to lose. But I think if Chip Trainum is 10 inches shorter on that run, I think Ohio State's in a bad spot. I don't think it means the season's over, but I think there would have been a negative vibe around this team because especially the way they lost, that they didn't lose in a shootout, but like to have lost this game with fourth down failures and you don't take advantage of your playmakers enough. I thought Ohio State needed this. I thought Ryan Day needed this. A lot of people think Ryan Day doesn't win big games. I thought they needed to win this big game. Now, I still don't think they're going to go undefeated during the regular season. This is a tough schedule. This is a tough game. But I think this I thought was defining for Ohio State. Did you think that, or as we sit here now, the way this game played out, would you agree that Ohio State needed this more than Notre Dame? Like, I think Notre Dame's okay.
Yeah.
I think they're sad they lost, but they gave a big crowd an exciting game and they gave them some hope. So I think Notre Dame's okay. I don't think Ohio State would have been okay if they lost.
Certainly not if they would have lost in the fashion it was setting up to be, right? It would have been more of the same. So yeah, like if you would have said, because we were talking about this before the game or earlier this week, and I think I agreed with Bo Bishop and maybe Austin and Berm too, or at least Austin, that this was a bigger game for Notre Dame. And then especially because like Marcus Freeman came out and said like we're going to play aggressive. Like I don't actually think they did that. Now they were running the ball really well, so did they have to do it? I don't know, but like I didn't think either team really cut it loose the way they said they were going to, which would have been a really frustrating point for Ohio State fans because that's what they've come to expect. Like after the Georgia game, like that's what they want out of this team in these games like this, and they didn't quite get it. So if it would have been a loss along those lines, then yeah, I think it would have been pretty detrimental to what Ohio State's trying to build and become this year. Even in the face of the fact like losing a game does not necessarily dash your playoff hopes, but it's just like how could you believe in it if they were to lose another game like that? So to pull it off, flips the script, right? So yes, with the way it played out ultimately, like this, it's not merely winning, like it's the way that it was done, I think ends up meaning more for Ohio State than it would have meant for Notre Dame.
If Ohio State had lost this game but run the table in the Big Ten and won the Big Ten title as a one-loss team, they would have made the playoff, right? Mm-hmm. I think it would have lessened their chances of doing that if he had been a half yard short of the goal line or if Kyle McCord had thrown a pick on the final drive.
Yeah.
Because I think there would have been something that hovered over this team. And instead, I think it might be something that propels this team. So that's 23 minutes on. Man, that's a good win. Like maybe that might, man, that's a win. And in this situation, a win is good. Right. So I'm like, mm-hmm. Did you play perfect? Did you do everything you needed to do? That has to be acknowledged first. So now let's break it down. Let's break down how it got to that point that they needed their new starting quarterback to lead a 15-play drive in the final minute and a half to score the winning touchdown by 2 inches on the last play of the game. Let's talk about the first 2 fourth down calls. And let's talk about the first one at the goal line, which is 3 tight ends, 2 running backs. Chip Trainum as a lead blocker for Mayan Williams. Joe Royer, Cade Stover, G. Scott in the game. No receivers in the game. And they run, it's at the 1-yard line, and they run like a little play action. Chip Trainum comes out in the flat. Joe Royer is on the right side of the line and is supposed to run a route across the formation, which is a little bit, I think, like the Jeff Hireman route against Purdue. Like when that works, you sort of almost slip the tight end out, but mm-hmm. Joe Royer slipped. He fell down right off the line. So like that was gone. Chip Trainum was covered. Mayan Williams was in the block. And then you wind up with G. Scott and Cade Stover both kind of leak into the back corner of the end zone. But it's 2 Ohio State guys and 3 defenders in one spot as Kyle McCord is moving to his right. And I sent a screenshot of that play to our texters. And I said, Ohio State's supposed to win with skill. And there's not a lot of skill in this play.
Yep.
That's what you're talking about. And that's such a differentiating factor. Just the people who were on the field on the last fourth down play as opposed to the first fourth down play. Marvin Harrison was on the field. Emeka Egbuka was on the field. I think that's the new rule. Don't run a 4th and 1 play when those guys aren't on the field, because it opens everything up. And that was that not like the worst version of what they try to do, which is like, hey, you are throwing on 4th and 1 because you're acknowledging you don't trust yourself to get it with a push from your line and a physical running back, but you're throwing it with none of your best pass catchers in the game because you're more focused on tricking the defense than doing what you do best.
Yeah, I don't like relying on that. It's already hard enough to throw the ball down there. To do it where your only path to success is tricky, like hoping the defense messes up, is not sound. It's not good process in my mind. And what is particularly frustrating about it, and like I'm trying not to be too hard on it because I think like they won. But the last 2 weeks, I felt like they had been trending in a good direction with a lot of their short yardage, which is lining up in the shotgun, which is having your receivers on the field, only playing with one tight end. I think they had a third down. I can't remember if it was the last game or the Youngstown State game where they didn't have a tight end on the field at all, and they converted a third down. Like that's what they need to be doing. I don't know why they make it so hard on themselves in those situations. Like their goal line wrinkle on 3rd and 1 was to put Caden Curry at fullback. Like that is textbook overthinking. I don't understand it. I think Ryan Day is still very much stuck on something that is putting themselves in those situations. And then the second 4th down.
So, all right, we'll go to the second one. So you don't like the first one.
I hate the first one.
And I don't like, again, ideally, I guess maybe they don't cover Chip when he slips out or Royer comes open. I guess maybe what you're hoping there for is, again, a mistake by the defense that leads to a guy standing by himself in the end zone.
Right.
But then like once you don't get that, it's like, uh-oh, okay.
But they also too, like when they get in that formation, they only do 2 things.
Right.
and the thing they tried to do, they did twice against Indiana, and the second time they tried to do it, Indiana's like, nope, we saw that already.
Okay. Second one, they wind up doing a thing which you have been talking about that you don't like, which is asking the Ohio State tight ends to block on the perimeter.
Yep.
They put the whole play. They line up G. Scott and Cade Stover next to each other on the right, jet sweep from left to right with the Emeka Egbuka, and it comes down to Fryer, Stover, and G. Scott making blocks, and like they don't make the blocks, and Emeka has nowhere to go. And it was dead from the jump. But again, is that what you do best? It's like, what's going to convert this? Our perimeter tight end blocking. That's on the list of things that Ohio State does well offensively. Where is that? Not very high, right?
No, it's pretty low. And you're also asking a wide receiver on 4th and 1 to run like 25 yards horizontally for no reason to get forward 1 yard. Like I don't get it. Just if you're going to do that, throw the ball. I don't understand it. It's more overthinking. It's a different kind of overthinking, I guess. Like, high marks for actually putting your best players on the field in that particular moment. But we have enough evidence that the tight ends aren't good perimeter blockers. I don't know why they keep asking them to do it.
So let me ask a very specific question. Why don't they do the Jalen Hurts quarterback sneak push?
They have not. Have they? I don't know this off. I feel like they've run a quarterback sneak since Justin Fields left.
I don't know, but I think Kyle's physical and athletic enough to do it. I understand why they didn't do it with CJ. That kind of wasn't CJ's thing, right? But I don't know why they don't do it with Kyle. Shouldn't they? Don't you think he could do it? And you have Chip train him, push him into the stands if you have to, or Mayan push him, or line up Caden Curry in the backfield and push Kyle like everybody else at every level of football is doing right now? Why don't they do that?
No idea. I don't know. I mean, I guess is it more, I think, lack of trust with the interior offensive line getting the push they need to do that? But you don't even need a push. You just don't need to get pushed back.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So they still have things to work on.
Yeah.
All props for doing it when you needed it the most.
100%.
But they still have things to work on. But at least even the final one was an adjustment that they had the right guys on the field. So of their 4th and 1 calls, that was the best one. Right?
Which is the right time to call it, I suppose. Yeah.
They're ascending in their 4th and 1 calls. Okay. Since we're on this, let's talk about the run game. And this is going to lead us down a path, which is, I feel like what Ryan Day thinks he wants and then what he says he wants is so often different. And it's almost like he's not recruiting to the team he coaches. That it's almost like he has a GM. It's like, I don't know, like, why you give me these players? I'm trying to play this way. And it's like, you're in charge of that. It's that he constantly. Let's talk about the running backs. He wants 4 yards a carry. He talks about it all the time. He wants toughness. And their running back is a home run hitter. And Travion Henderson tonight averaged, it was like he had 10 carries for like, I think 36 yards in the first half. And of those 10 carries, only 4 of the 10 went for at least 4 yards. And like his last 4 carries of the first half were like 2, 3, 1, 2. It's exactly what Ryan Day doesn't want. And at halftime, you're like, well, I think it's time to go to Chip. And then they hand it to him in the third quarter, and he has a jetpack on his back, and he runs 61 yards for a touchdown. So Ohio State finishes with 27 carries for 126 yards, but that's 1 carry for 61 and 26 carries for 65.
Yep.
Ryan Day says all the time he wants like a tough running back who can get at least 4 yards a carry, but they play a boomer bust home run hitter who goes 1-2, 1-2, 61. Are they caught there? Is there like, what should they do about that? Because right when you get to the point where it's like, well, just play Chip at running back, they keep Trey in the game, and he busts a touchdown that absolutely gets them rolling. What would you do?
Yeah, it's hard because of the 61, right? Like I don't know. They put themselves in a little bit of a high wire act on third down in this game because of inefficiencies running the ball on first and second down. They end up having to go 10 of 17 on third down in this game, which is really good in a game like this, but you don't want to have to do it to win. And part of that is a big part of that is the run game and how you're setting yourself up. So I don't know. I think you want to see Chip be more a part of it, right? He ends up with 6 carries for 13 yards. I think, especially in a world where Ohio State's offensive line, I just think is not going to block it up for a bunch of big hits. Like the running backs, at least not right now. The running backs are the ones that like need to get these yards. I think you need to. You don't have to, phase Travion out. Certainly, I'm not saying that, but maybe find a little more balance between his home run potential and the guys like Chip Trainum and I guess Mayan Williams, who ends up with 1 carry in this game, who are in theory more equipped to get you 4 when all you block for is 1. Like Travion, I think, is a textbook get you what's blocked for, but if you can get him to that second level, he's going to maybe take it out of the house. But if you can't get him there, he's not quite going to get there. They end up with 1 run of 10 plus yards in this game. It was a 61-yard touchdown. So 1 big play running the football and not efficient enough to, I think, warrant how much they ended up running it. But I don't know. It's hard. I think you want a good mix of get Travion in space, whatever that looks like, right? Because he can do that stuff. But I don't know that it means you need to turn around and hand the ball to him like more than a dozen times a game until your offensive line shows that it's capable of operating in a way that I think brings out the best in Travion.
So they have both options, but they really have some decisions to make, I think, about how to best utilize the balance of Chip and Trey. And then you see at the end, right? They come out on the last got to have it drive, and the first 2 plays are throws to Travion, right?
Yeah.
The first one kind of gets messed up a little bit, and the second one he's open, and Kyle just misses it.
A little hot, yeah.
Right, it's a little hot, and again, if they hit that one, that might go for 15 or 20. Like that's great. Like I like that part of it. So I don't know what they should do, but it is just odd to me when Ryan Day talks about wanting a tough running back to get 4 yards, and then they just keep handing it to Travion Henderson between the tackles, and like it's just not his thing. And it's the 3rd year of this now. I think they should know that. He burst on the scene as a true freshman on a screen pass for 70 yards against Minnesota in his first game. Like we know what it looks like, what the best of Travion Henderson looks like. And he is and should be a very valuable part of this offense. But it's a little odd to me that here we are in year 3, and it feels like they're still trying to work out the best way to use him.
They are. But it's also to me like feels like a weird conversation, right? Because he kind of saved their butt today with that long touchdown run. Like that was a great play for him. I think they actually made a guy or 2 miss on that play and just kind of ran away from people. So I'm not like placing any blame on Travion when we're having this conversation. Like I think he is what he is as a player, and what he is like in moments very special as a running back. It's just about strengths and weaknesses, and every player has them. And I don't think they do a good enough job of protecting Travion against his weaknesses. So like that 3rd and 1 play before the Emeka sweep, they just like ran an inside zone play, didn't block Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and Trey is just not a guy who's going to make a guy who's that much bigger than him miss, or like drive that guy forward to make sure he gets the yard. He ends up being like half a foot short of the down to gain for a first down, because he's just not built to get that space. Whereas if Chip Train was running that ball, it's probably a first down, right? It's not dissimilar from the end of the game touchdown play. I think Chip gets that first down. So it's about how they're using him. It's not about Travion. They could maximize, I think, the impact he has on the game by using him in better spots.
So let's talk about Chip. It remains amazing that this is a guy who Ohio State was interested in recruiting. He wanted to be a running back. Ohio State didn't think he was a running back. So an Ohio kid goes to Arizona State, plays running back, then decides to come back to Ohio State to be a linebacker. He winds up starting at running back against Michigan last year and playing pretty well. And he scores on the gotta have it play of the season. They hand it to the guy who came here to be a linebacker. He has usurped Mayan Williams as the Thunder part of this package. Is that where we are?
Seems to be the case, yeah.
So that this idea, I will say, like, right, Notre Dame plays a bunch of backs, but Audric Estime was the guy that you focused on coming into this game. Audric Estime was 14 for 70. Audric Estime is a big physical runner. I don't know. It's Chip 85% of Audric Estime, or maybe 100% of him if you used him that way. Mm-hmm. You see what Estime does. He's not necessarily going to break one, but he'll run through some people. What is that a decent comparison of what Chip could do if he was used that way?
Yeah, I think so. And he ends up the bell cow, right? Estime does, and then they mix in a little bit of few, like Jabron Payton is kind of a hammer too, the way they used them. But then I thought they mixed in some other backs that got some space too. They had guys average over 7 yards a carry, and Estime averages 5. Like I don't know that Ohio State should operate anymore moving forward in a world where Travion gets more carries than Chip. If Travion has more touches than Chip, I think that's fine. But I think the best version of this offense is probably maybe a little bit just a flip of what we saw in this game, like a dozen or so rushes for Chip and maybe like 8 to 10 rushes for Travion. But then you also sprinkle in 3 to 5 receptions for Travion too. I think that's probably the way to move forward.
All right, let's continue to talk about the run game. We're going to get to the pass game, and then we're going to get to the defense, because this defense did only give up 14 points. And it felt like there was one thing in particular they did really well, which is something that Jim Knowles talked about during the week that he thought they had been doing well. Where are you with this offensive line in the run game?
Needs a lot of work. And I thought that coming into the game, which is why I thought they weren't going to run it as much, because I just think they're not good enough at it to do it. So they need to be better at working the combos and getting to the second level. I will say, like, when it looks good, it looks really good on that the touchdown run from Travion Henderson. They ran like a counter play, and like Matthew Jones did a great job of kind of cracking. I think it was Maurice Leofau, the linebacker, and getting Travion to the second level there. So there are plays where it looks awesome. It's just not consistent enough.
The thing that Justin Fry had been talking about before the Western Kentucky game about that violence, right? It didn't feel like they had it tonight. I didn't feel that at all, and it feels like when you watch, I thought I watched multiple moments where Joe Alt or somebody on the Notre Dame offensive line got to the second level. There were 2 big run plays that I noticed that Notre Dame hit that Joe Alt blocked Tommy Eichenberg on the play. And yep. It's that moment in the middle of the field where, I don't know, most of the time Tommy Eichenberg makes that tackle, but the best left tackle in college football is in his face. And so he can't make that play. And when Notre Dame, when their offensive linemen get to the second level, they stick. They stay on their blocks. They finish guys. And I felt like there were multiple moments tonight, and I just thought I noticed it most with the young starters, where Josh Simmons and Carson Hinsman were not finishing blocks. And they would initially engage the guy, and then their guy would come off of them and make the tackle.
Yeah.
And the difference, and again, nobody's asking Carson Hinsman and Josh Simmons to play like Joe Alt, but it's such a stark difference of what it looks like. And there are times, again, some of the holes that Notre Dame was creating in the running game, I was like, well, Trey could run through those. But then you can watch plays where it's like, okay, you can see how it's supposed to be blocked up, and there comes the guy slipping off one of the Ohio State offensive linemen and tackling Travion Henderson for a gain of 1. And I just didn't think that violence that Ohio State itself had talked about was present in the run game for much of the night.
It wasn't, and it hasn't been really all year. I think that's been their biggest problem is they don't hold on the blocks consistently enough, and they don't combo well enough and work up to the second level as consistently as they need to. And that's why you see, you'll see 4 consecutive 2-yard runs because that's what's happening. And then you're like, oh, we got it right on this play and it went for 15, right? So like, I think they can build towards something. Like I did not expect this offensive line to be anywhere near a finished product by this point in the season. I wondered if they'd be good enough for Ohio State to get to win this game, and I guess in the end they were. They protect it great. Their pass protection actually has been quite good all year, which has been consistent with the program. I think basically since Ryan Day has been here, it's the run blocking. It's also been consistently inconsistent, I guess, since Ryan Day has been here, and it's more magnified now. It's perhaps the worst it's been since he's been the head coach in terms of just like down to down consistency. But I don't know. I think you could grab onto the moments that look good and think they can get better over the course of the season. It's just a matter of like, will it matter in a game before that happens? Potentially, but they got by with it today.
There were definitely times where the San Diego State transfer was having trouble with the Ohio State transfer, that Josh Simmons was not doing a great job with Javonte Jean-Baptiste. And Baptiste made, I guess, was it on the 3rd and goal? Kind of got off the block from Josh Fryer on the Mayan run, I think. Like JJB kind of made the play because he beat Josh Fryer on that play. And again, it's nothing against Javonte Jean-Baptiste. People saw him here. He was a good player, but that's not the best edge guy that Ohio State's going to see this year. And there were, I thought, multiple key moments where Ohio State's tackles couldn't handle him. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, he played a really good game. It was trending toward Ohio State's defensive line, like was really not making any plays. And the guy who was like a cast off from that group was making quite a few plays until JT Tuimoloau, had back-to-back really good plays on that last drive from Notre Dame. But yeah, he looked strong, like stronger, I guess, than Ohio State's tackles, which is not a world I suppose you want to be living in. And I don't think in the end the strength of Notre Dame's ends was going to be like exposing those guys in the pass rush, and it ended up not being the case. Ohio State was better in that area, but point of attack running the football, I thought the interior, like first blush, the interior of the line, I thought was okay. I have to go back and watch it again, I guess, but the tackles are remain a little inconsistent is the word I keep using with maintaining their play strength.
Okay. Is there anything else about the Ohio State offense you really want to focus on? Flowers to Kyle McCord for leading that. Let's talk about the pass game. Let's talk about Emeka. We got to talk about Emeka.
Big game.
Because Marvin gets hurt, and Emeka Egbuka, 7 catches, 96 yards, and the catch to get him down to the goal line. Emeka felt like Jackson Smith and Jigba 2.0 to me. That like what Jackson did so well in 2021 was just be in the right place, in the hole in the defense. And Todd Blackledge was talking about it a lot during the game, like, okay, settling in here so you don't lead the throw into the safety. And it just felt like in a world where there were times in this game where it felt like it was difficult for Ohio State to get open. Then there came a moment where it felt like, oh, Emeka's getting open every play. Yeah. And to have Marvin on the outside doing that, and then Emeka working the middle of the field at its best. They talked about it so much in the preseason. Marvin's going to draw 2 a bunch of the time. They're going to run bracket coverage on him. They're going to lean everything his way. And then what? And Emeka excelled in the then what part of that. And they don't win the game unless he does that. And I thought this was almost the top end version of what Emeka Egbuka looks like in this offense.
Yeah, and I would have lumped Cade Stover in a little bit with that too. He also ended up with 7 catches in this game for 52 yards. A couple third downs of Stover, like just quick hitting stuff where he's kind of open in the middle of the field because so much attention is getting paid to the outside guys. And Ohio State needs to be able to do that. I wasn't fearful of their ability to do so. But I guess like maybe if you look at that Indiana game, right, didn't really felt like they were doing that all that much. And that was the last time they played a good defense. So to see them do it in this game against the best defense they played so far is encouraging. And I think Emeka is going to probably find himself in those situations more often than not moving forward. And we'll see what happens with Marvin's injury here too, in terms of his availability as they go into an off week and then play a couple of Big Ten games. But Emeka's, I think, ability to find space was pivotal in this game, and it's something about his game that I think perhaps goes, I don't want to say unappreciated, but maybe unrecognized a little too often, because of everyone else that he's around. But I wouldn't put it on the Jackson Smith and Jigba level, but I think it's very good.
This remains an offense that is kind of geared to get the slot guy open.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a guy who can do that, it was throws to Emeka that got him down for the 4th down. They didn't convert on the goal line, and it's throws to Emeka that got him down for the game-winning touchdown. And then the other time they got near the end zone, it was just Trey. So like Emeka's the one who made scoring possible. And that's such an important component of this. Like if this continues for Ohio State, like just that pairing, and whether it's going to be Carnell Tate on the outside and Brandon Inniss in the slot in the next version of this, or whatever it is, but that pairing is what just continues to be, I think, the most devastating aspect of this Ohio State offense. And I thought it was devastating to Notre Dame in this game. They ended up in that moment, they won doing what they do best. And that, I think, is what's the most encouraging thing about this. They had a quarterback who stood in there and ripped it to guys who got open when they needed it. And they did that while Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't quite himself. 3 catches for 32 yards, hurts the ankle. And again, he just was talking this week, because they mentioned it on the broadcast last week that he'd had a right ankle injury all last year. He said, yeah, I heard it in week 2 against Arkansas State. It kind of bothered me all year. I couldn't really cut, or I couldn't decelerate in some of my routes. Like I sort of had to chop my feet a certain way. I had to sort of give myself some allowances. And now he hurts his right ankle again. So I guess the good part of it is, okay, well, because I was sort of asking him on Wednesday, like, hey, it's kind of cool to be healthy, like to not have an ankle injury. It's like, oh, and he injured his ankle. Well, he had a hurt right ankle last year, and he did what he did.
Yeah.
So it's not like he can't play with it. But when he goes in a tent in a big game, you can't help but think of Georgia.
Yes, I thought of Georgia. I thought of last year's Notre Dame game when they lost Jackson in the first quarter of that game. Thankfully, he seems like he's okay. Well, I don't know. It's good. It's good that they have the week off, and he can try to get better from that. He was moving fine. Probably didn't have his burst, right? I think there was a play. Kyle took a shot to him that I thought was actually a pretty well thrown ball, and Marvin had a little bit of separation, but I think he would have had more separation and caught a touchdown pass had he not been, somewhat hampered by that ankle.
Yeah, and then he did draw at least 2 pass interference calls. So it's one of those things I almost like, we got to have a stat to lump in all the pass interference calls for guys. So like, that's 30 yards.
Yeah.
Because one of them, it was like, were they both plays where it's like he almost caught it and then they had to review it and it was like, oh no, he didn't catch it. But since he didn't catch it, by the way, it was pass interference. I think both of them were like that. So he's making an impact.
Did you, this is unrelated to what we're talking about, but I just think it's funny. I did not notice this when Ryan Day was cutting his promo on Lou Holtz, but I guess Jerry Emig told him to take a deep breath before doing it, and then Ryan Day said, "Watch this."
No, for real?
Yeah, it was great. By the way, I hope
Coach, just take a deep breath, okay?
I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with Ryan Day doing that after the game. By the way, I thought that was cool.
No. I mean, I think that's what fans want.
Yeah. That's what college football should be, in my opinion.
Here's the thing about this. I do think that Ryan Day, it's certainly not as much now as when he started, but does carry the reality that he's not from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
In a world where Urban Meyer is from Ohio and Luke Fickell was from Ohio and Jim Tressel was from Ohio and everybody's from Ohio, and he's not. And if you live in a world where you can only hire coaches from Ohio, you're going to be in a bad spot. You have to hire the best people. So I think he still feels that. I know for a fact how much he felt that after beating Michigan in 2019. I know that because he really felt that going in, and he was getting emotional post-game press conference that day because he felt that. He felt he was carrying something there. I think he still carries that to some degree, and I think in a world where they've lost to Michigan the last 2 years, and people think they haven't been their best selves, and why not? And I think that gets folded into it. So when he feels that, I mean, he's part of that thing. He was like, didn't he say like, we're from Ohio? He was being an Ohioan there. Because guess what? He lives here. I don't know. It's hard to be the Ohio State head coach and not live in Ohio. And they didn't even go back to New Hampshire on vacation this summer. They went somewhere else for vacation. So
I actually think they got rid of their vacation home in New England. Yeah.
He's de-Hampshiring himself a little bit, right? I think they went out west and hung out. So because guess where he's from now? He's from Ohio. So in that moment, like, that's not fake, right? He's not. So it's not. It is. You said it's like a wrestling promo. It's real, right? He's mad. But he's not just mad for himself. He's mad on behalf of something. He's mad on behalf of his players, first and foremost. But he's like mad on behalf of the program. He's mad on behalf of the Scarlet and Gray. He's mad on behalf of the Buckeye leaves on the helmets. How dare you say that about us because we're from Ohio? I think every moment like that boils out of Ryan Day is good.
I agree. I think because he's looking for like a touchstone, I think, to channel some of that a little bit. And I think that's been difficult for him at times. So I don't know. Lou Holtz gave it to him, I guess.
Yeah. The touchstone is not toughness. If the touchstone is anti-Lou Holtz, then great.
That's right.
Like if he wants to wear a pair of Lou Holtz glasses to the news conference on Tuesday and throw them down and smash them or whatever, do like a Lou Holtz. Maybe I'll work my Lou Holtz impersonation. Then great, do that. Because Lou Holtz, by the way, is a wrestling heel.
Yeah.
What Lou Holtz and Mark May did at the end of their ESPN run was bad wrestling heel stuff. I mean, it was not analysis. I don't know what it was, but it was not normal football analysis. So it's like they pulled Lou out of the whatever storage unit where they put him away for a couple of years, and he brought it. So then Ryan Day responds. And by the way, if they wrestled, I do think Ryan Day would probably pin Lou Holtz.
Yeah, I think he would too.
All right. Are we good on the offense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Let's talk about the defense. So the main thing that they did well was they took away all the deep stuff. They did like everything about Notre Dame, which is run the ball, take deep shots, run the ball, take deep shots. They didn't do anything. Right? What's their longest complete?
They had 4. So Stat Broadcast here has like big plays, and it's for passing plays. It's gains of 15 yards or more. They had 4 of them. 25 yards, 15 yards, 28 yards, 25 yards. But those weren't like over the top. Those were like soft middle.
They had 11 pass plays of 30 yards or more in their first 4 games. So they were averaging almost 3 a game. So that's what I thought was going to be a problem. And Jim Knowles said during the week that he thought Ohio State had done a good job of that. Their secondary had done a good job of that. And coming into the game, I wasn't so sure about the Ohio State pass rush. And everybody talks about coupling the pass rush and the coverage. I didn't really believe in the pass rush, but I believed in the coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And so Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock and then Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom and Sonny Styles at safety, they never let anybody get over the top on them in a world where Ohio State was done in against Michigan and on one play against Georgia last year by that exact thing happening. And that is absolute necessary progress that needs to be acknowledged, and it's purposeful. It's something they've clearly talked about, something they've worked on, and it's great to get your hands on passes and knock them down. But for this defense, job one was let's not get beat deep anymore. And in this game against an offense designed to do that, it didn't happen at all.
It did not. And they were clearly intent on limiting it. They played a lot of soft zone coverage in this game. I was like, there was a point, I think, in the third quarter, I was like, have they played a single snap of man coverage? Like it just seemed like every time Sam Hartman dropped back to pass, it was zone, and he had a lot of time to work that zone, and he found somebody in the middle of the field more often than not. But that was just by design on the back end, I think. It did seem like Ohio State felt fairly confident in its ability to wall up a little bit once Notre Dame got the ball down, maybe inside the 20-yard line, and Notre Dame only ends up scoring 2 touchdowns. So in a way, I guess it worked, and they were a little bend but don't break. But I think if you want to live in a world where your chief goal is to not give up explosive plays, I do think you need to lean that way a little bit.
2 touchdowns for Notre Dame, 2 punts, stopped on downs twice, missed a field goal. That was very helpful to Ohio State. And is that so? They're going to face JJ McCarthy. They're going to face Talia Tonga-Vailoa. They're going to face Drew Aller. They're going to face Tanner Mordecai. They're going to face Hudson Card. Is this the way? Is this the way, at least through the regular season, to give up this stuff in front and make sure you don't get beat deep for a team that lost 2 games last year because they got beat deep?
Yeah, probably.
You're apprehensive. You don't actually like it that much.
No, I don't. It's not that I have an inherent problem with that style of defense. It's they need to be better on third down. Like Notre Dame had too many sustained drives. Ohio State ended up with 65 plays in this game, but because they got 15 on the last possession of the game. The defense
so happy. He'll be like, I don't even care if we won or lost. We just got 65 plays. It was great to see those 15 plays in the final 90 minutes.
Right. I think that it was a thing in the Youngstown State game too, right? They just couldn't quite get off the field enough. And I think that does need to change. That's where you need to find that balance between aggression and kind of playing it straight up. And early in the game, I thought Jim Knowles did a good job of that. Like they had that 1 third down call where it was unpredictability. It wasn't necessarily aggression, but Jim Knowles wants to keep teams on their heels, and
that's what he says. What he does matches what he says, because that's exactly what he said.
Yeah, and they switched up like the play where they will send the linebackers and drop the defensive ends. It's called a simulated pressure because it mimics the feeling of a blitz without actually sending extra people. But they switched up and dropped the tackles instead of the ends, and like Tyleik Williams almost got an interception. Like that's the kind of stuff I think they need to find ways to do more of, rather than just like ratchet up the aggression. But they need to find, I think, a little bit better plan on third down. But part of the third down stuff too was like Notre Dame was just kind of lining up and moving them on some short runs too. So it wasn't tremendous, but 14 points is 14 points. It's just maybe you'd like the time of possession to look a little different.
Okay, so 14 points is 14 points, but also Ohio State's ahead 10-0 and then gives up the 14 points.
Right.
Because the 2 touchdown drives from Notre Dame were back-to-back in the second half. The first one, 13 plays for 75 yards, 7 minutes and 39 seconds. The second one, 11 plays, 96 yards, 6 minutes and 28 seconds. And I will say, in a world where there's always a lot of discussion about how much Ohio State should or shouldn't rotate its defensive line, rotate everybody, I was watching Notre Dame just sort of like do what it wanted to do late in the second half and wondering, like, is this defense tired?
Yeah.
Like, so what is that? Did you think that?
I have not said this, so like I'm not trying to make myself seem smart after the fact. I actually think they've played some of their starting defensive linemen too many snaps leading into this game. If you look at some of the workload of people like Tyleik Williams and JT Tuimoloau, I think there were opportunities prior to this game to spell them and perhaps make them a bit fresher for the end of this game, because I figured they were going to have to play the entirety of this game. So that's the thing that's in my head. But yeah, I felt they were definitely getting pushed off the ball like toward the end of the game, and to the point where there were a couple of snaps where they had to put like Jaden McKenzie out there when they probably didn't want to, but like they had to get Tyleik Williams and Mike Hall and Ty Hamilton a blow because they just couldn't hold up for that many plays.
That first touchdown drive for Notre Dame was 13 plays. It was 10 rushes and 3 pass plays.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought Notre Dame would run the ball to set up the deep shots. And so they took away the deep shots, but I didn't really think that Notre Dame would run the ball in a way that just was right down Ohio State's throat. And then that is exactly what they did on those 2 touchdown drives. Some portion of it is what we already talked about with how good that Notre Dame offensive line is. And it's the best offensive line that Ohio State will play this year. Like I know Michigan probably has 7 NFL guys on their offensive line, but they don't have Joe Alt.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. So do you agree with that? But that part of it is like, all right, well, at least Ohio State doesn't have to deal with that again.
Yeah, at least not for a while. We'll see what Michigan's offensive line becomes, but for the time being, I don't think they're going to see anything close to that.
Okay. So do you come away from this game with concerns about Ohio State's run defense, or no?
No, not necessarily. It's kind of weird. Like Notre Dame averaged 4.5 yards a carry, which is not great. Like it doesn't match up with, I feel like, what our eyes saw. Notre Dame runs 39 times for 176 yards. They had a bunch of 10-yard runs, but I actually think, like, I've not done this, but if you dig into the big plays for Notre Dame, So they had 7 carries for 103 yards, which means they had 32 additional carries for what, 73 yards? Like that's pretty good. Like it wasn't it was like, to your point, it was kind of like 2 drives that they really moved the ball on them via the run in a way that felt a little problematic. But they averaged like fewer than 3 yards per carry in the first quarter. It was 6 yards per carry in the second quarter, but only on 6 carries. This third quarter, they ran 16 times and averaged over 5 yards a carry. And then in the fourth quarter, they ran 10 times and only averaged 4 yards a carry.
Okay. So not what you believe to be a sustained problem. Let's talk about Ohio State getting after Sam Hartman, Ned. We knew how good this offensive line was going to be. And in the end, it did feel like Sam Hartman more often than not had as much time as he needed, but he just couldn't or didn't make the big throws to really hurt Ohio State. Again, it's a constant point of discussion. Where are we on Ohio State's ability to generate a pass rush with their defensive line?
I did not expect the ends to do a whole lot in this game, given the matchup. I thought we would have seen much more from the interior in terms of pressure, especially from a guy like Mike Hall. Like, we talked about, this is a big Mike Hall game. He might be their most important player in this game, and like it didn't really hit. I think Tyleik Williams played a good game, but he didn't really get after it too much either. Tyleik Williams did have a play where he like dumped Joe Alt into Sam Hartman's lap.
That was the play I wanted to talk about. Like, I feel like they didn't talk about it enough on the TV. It was the one time in the whole game where somebody knocked Joe Alt backward.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing like that Joey Bosa does to people. Tyleik Williams knocked the best left tackle in college football back into his quarterback and threw him off balance, and I think forced an incompletion.
Yeah, I think that's right. There were a few throws where I thought Hartman got sped up or moved enough and was thrown off that he did miss throws. So I'll be curious to see what the pressure rate was in this game. I was not expecting a huge number of sacks. I thought a major key to the game was making Sam Hartman uncomfortable, and Ohio State certainly did not do that enough. Well, maybe they did do that enough. They did it enough to win the game, I guess, but they didn't do it maybe as much as I thought they were going to have to do to win the game. So I'm sure there is a lot of disappointment in the defensive line not generating a ton of pressures or sacks in this game.
All right. Again, like what was it, like 8 drives for each team? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drives for Ohio State.
Yeah, Notre Dame had 9, but one was a kneel down at the end of the half.
Yeah, that's just the world. That's the world we're in. I do think so it was like freshman year. Tyleik Williams got a lot of attention for like his garbage time play, and Mike Hall barely played. And so then going in to 2022, there's like a lot of Tyleik Williams talk, I think, like nationally, and the people on the beat were like, actually, it's Mike Hall. And then Mike Hall was better. And now I feel like sort of like Mike Hall. And now to me, it's a Mike Hall and Tyleik Williams conversation that I feel like they've now come back around to the same place, that with as much as Tyleik is playing this year, and he has impactful snaps, absolutely, that I think when we talk about defensive tackles making impactful plays, I think they're on the same level again. Do you agree with that?
I mean, based off the way that things have transpired so far this year, I'd probably put Tyleik ahead of Mike a little bit. I think Tyleik's been their second best defensive player behind Denzel Burke. Tyleik's been very good this year.
Better than Tommy? When we do we'll do our player rankings maybe in the bye week.
I thought this was not a tremendous linebacker game.
It's because they had Joe Alt and Notre Dame offensive linemen in their grills the entire game.
There were a few runs where it was like, that linebacker I don't think was supposed to be in that gap.
So Jim Knowles has chilled out. Ben, do you like, again, Jim Knowles had a come to Jesus moment, come to touchdown Jesus moment with us at a news conference a couple weeks ago, where he said, at Oklahoma State, I had to be more feast or famine. And last year I learned that's not how you have to be here. You have to let your players play. So I do think this was an example. This showed how we have gone from feast or famine Jim Knowles to kind of bend but don't break Jim Knowles. And the result was only giving up 14 points and giving Ohio State a chance to win, as opposed to, listen, the Michigan game last year, the defensive mistakes took away their chance to win. Yep. Yes, the offense had to do more in the second half. Yes, they had 50 yards of offense or whatever in the second half, and it's not only the defense, but the defense's mistakes changed the entire complexion of everything. I think what changed the complexion of this was the defense didn't make mistakes. They didn't give up big plays. And so even while Ohio State was kind of like working it out, they had a chance to do so. I feel like this is the Jim Knowles, and I'll be honest, this is the Jim Knowles like I was begging for at the end of last year when it was like, why are you blitzing on every play?
Yeah.
What are you doing? And so if that means, yes, I think you need more from the defensive line getting four-man pressure. But if this is kind of what it's going to look like, I think as you see the evolution and the growth of Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison stays healthier. Ryan Day still plays this game in his head of the toughness game. How much should we throw it? If the defense plays like this, I think that will allow the offense to work it out. Like, I'm pretty okay with this version of the Jim Knowles defense, in large part because I believe in the ability of the secondary to cover, even if they're not getting a ton of pressure.
Yeah, I have a pretty high level of confidence in this secondary too, to not get consistently beat over the top and not like miss tackles at the rate that they were last year that led to some of these big plays too. So they seem to have a pretty good grasp on that. And I think we'll even get better, right? As a guy like Jordan Hancock perhaps gets even more comfortable at nickel. I think there's maybe an opportunity to play Jordan Hancock more on the outside. Like Davis Nigbinosun had some moments in this game where he was not only handsy, but like he got cooked off the line by Rico Flores on that touchdown.
Over aggressive.
Yeah.
He fell down. He was so aggressive. He's so aggressive. And it's hard because you don't want to take all of that away from him, but you probably want to pare it down about 20% because he winds up at points in the game having good coverage and then getting called because he's too handsy. And then that play on the goal line, he literally just fell over because he bit so hard on one move, and the result was a wide open dude.
Right. And I don't think he's been bad by any stretch all year. I think he's been mostly okay all year and was good in moments in this game too. But I wonder how that evolves with that spot because Denzel Burke's not coming off the field, right? Denzel Burke is playing where he's playing every single snap. But can Jordan Hancock and Davis Nigbinosun start to rotate a little more on the outside? We'll see. But largely, I trust them. Like even a guy like Josh Proctor, who I had no trust in coming into this year, has proved me wrong, and that's fine. I'm perfectly comfortable owning that. He's played quite well, and Lathan Ransom's doing what he's doing, and I think they have a good handle on matching personnel with Sonny and Jordan Hancock, and it's nice to have the ability to do that. So, and I don't come away from this game thinking oh boy, this run defense is in trouble. I just think when you're on the field for as much as they were, you're going to get a little leaky at times, but they bowed up enough for me to feel confident in their ability to do so moving forward.
I just don't think this team has a great pass rusher at edge. And I think JT Tuimoloau is a very good football player. He is not a great pass rusher.
Yep.
He made an amazing play where he almost intercepted the screen.
That was crazy.
That's
man.
what he does best.
Yeah.
His read and react and his athleticism as he reads and reacts is awesome. His toolbox of hey, here we go, one-on-one with the tackle, let's get after it, is not great. He does not beat guys one-on-one that much. So, and I was all about Kenyatta Jackson coming into the year. I don't even know if he played in this game, that if it's a run, if you're worried about the Notre Dame run game and you just don't think anyone's going to beat Joe Alt or Blake Fisher, then you just chill out, I guess, and whatever. But I thought he'd be their best pass rusher. I just don't know that they're going to get much of a pass rush off the edge, and they're just going to have to live in the world where they can still play good defense without that. So again, most teams won't have the Notre Dame tackles, but I don't know that that's going to change a lot.
I also think too, and I'm not saying you have to live with this or accept it or be happy about it or whatever, but I do think their thought process is we have to be good against the run first, and playing JT especially gives them their best chance of doing that. And I think Jack Sawyer is also a much better run defender than he is pass rusher.
Would also like to acknowledge that Notre Dame once again did a crazy blitz to let Xavier Johnson get wide open.
What was that? Yeah, that was weird.
Right. Last year was it a double safety blitz or just, I think it was a double safety.
They blitzed both safeties, and CJ's really? And just
on the Xavier Johnson touchdown. Yeah. This was a corner blitz. The corner who was standing over Xavier Johnson blitzes, and then no one takes Xavier Johnson, who's wide open over the middle for a 40-yard catch and run, which again, that's the perfect example. Ohio State didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk away from a game and say, why did you call that blitz? It felt unnecessary. The risk was not worth the reward. and it cost you a touchdown or it cost you a 40-yard play, we can point to the moment that Notre Dame did it. And we can't point to the moment for Ohio State because they didn't. They didn't. Knowles has kind of stopped blitzing. What he does instead is bring the backers and drop the ends, or, as you noted, drop the D tackles.
Mm-hmm.
But he never brings 6 anymore. Last year, he brought 6 for no reason.
Rarely.
Like, what? We're going to bring 7? Let's bring 7. We can defend with 3. Who cares? Let's bring 8. He never does that anymore. He brings simulated pressure, but he's dropping guys in passing lanes and he's keeping safeties over the top. He's not putting Ohio State in do-or-die situations, and we have to acknowledge the growth there. And I think it's hard for him. That's not what he wants to do. That's not how he got here, and it's not his instinct. But it's an adjustment that I do think is going to help them in bigger games, and it helped them tonight.
I have a question for you. So last week during the broadcast, I don't know if you caught it or not, I mentioned it on the postgame show, and it's a similar conversation to what we were having with Jim Knowles earlier in the week and what we're talking about now, but it was just expressed a different way. And Brock Heward said that Jim Knowles said to him, like, I don't feel like I need to win the call anymore, or win the call as often as I have when I was at Oklahoma State or points previous when he was operating from a talent advantage. Like, I had to figure out what I thought they were going to do and then make the perfect call to stop it. And now I can just let my guys play. And I think he's doing that. But I also feel like Ryan Day is a little stuck in trying to win the call too much.
Oh, that is a fact. Let's do 2 hours on that on the bye week. I absolutely thought Jim Knowles was that last year. Absolutely. That when you call that blitz on J.J. McCarthy that leaves Cam Brown one-on-one and a missed tackle kills you. And it's like, well, if you make the tackle, it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. And Ryan Day, I still do. Ryan Day could probably learn a little bit from that, but this is the whole thing with Ryan Day because he's trying to call plays and be in charge of the whole team.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Knowles, I think I told people this. I guess it was like the Friday night before the first game. Went by the Woody. Take a picture. Sometimes I like to take pictures of the Woody Hayes statue at night because it looks cool. And Jim Knowles was walking out to his car, and it was like 9:30 or whatever. And I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Whatever. And he's like, just like, but he's not like because he thinks it's going to be a terrible year or whatever, but just because like he's just in that building 15 hours a day, just scheming, just trying to figure out what to do. So he can have all those conversations in his own mind. What if I do this? Well, I shouldn't do that. No, I want to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. But Ryan Day used to be able to do that. But now Ryan Day has to do that and be in charge of the whole team and worry about NIL and worry about recruiting. And by the way, like we know, like Jim Knowles isn't worried about recruiting because they haven't landed the linebacker, right? All the stuff but that's what Jim Knowles does. So that's why Jim Knowles is here. We've seen the progress of that. He can be in his own head and come to a resolution. Ryan Day doesn't have as much time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you thought he was going to pass off some of that, I just don't know. Like that conversation seems over. Brian Hartline's just the receivers coach still, right? Are we anywhere else on that?
Well, no, he's the offensive coordinator in the same way that Kevin Wilson was.
But I don't think that. I don't think that. Because when Kevin Wilson was the offensive coordinator, Ryan Day kind of had him like lead the run game stuff. Because really Ryan Day just wants to be in charge of the pass game. And that's not Brian. Brian's expertise actually Brian's expertise is the same as Ryan's. I think he's maybe not in name only, even as much as Kevin Wilson was in name only. So anyway,
he's got a play sheet on the sideline though. I did see that.
He doesn't. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we can dig in out with, hey, good win and all and everything, but what's really going on there? So I do think there's just some stuff that Ryan Day is trying to work out while simultaneously doing 15 other things, while being mad about Lou Holtz. You know who wasn't mad about Lou Holtz this week? Jim Knowles. Because all Jim Knowles cared about was what defense am I going to call on 2nd and 7 and what defense am I going to call on 3rd and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Day also stared at the play sheet trying to figure that out while also seething on behalf of the entire state of Ohio that how dare that 85-year-old man say that? Because he's mad as the head coach, but he also has to call plays. So he does like I think you're onto something here with the trying to win the call.
And I don't think it's an all the time thing. Like I don't know that he was necessarily doing that in a 2-minute drill, right? They were just kind of spreading it out, throwing it around. But it's the short yardage in particular where I think he's like trying to be perfect, and then like neutering his team's ability to actually be successful in those situations.
But you know what's not trying to win the call? Hand it to your big physical running back and tell him to get a yard.
That's right.
Which they did to win the game.
Yeah. It looks like Ryan Day had a whole lot more for Lou Holtz in his post-game press
really
conference too, which we are not watching. I'm sure Austin and Byrne will have plenty about it on Snap Judgments, but now I'm excited to go watch it.
Let me search Lou Holtz on Twitter and see if
I think that the Ryan Day saying "watch this" might have actually been in the post-game and not on television.
Okay.
But there's a very funny picture of Jerry Emming holding his hand up, like getting people to stop. He's like this, like stop asking Lou Holtz questions.
Really? Yeah. That seems about right though. That like there are 4,000 interesting football things to ask Ryan Day after this game, and it's like, I know this is the 11th Lou Holtz question, but just how mad were you on a scale of 1 to 10? This is a good win. I think it will propel them. And they have to play better to beat Penn State and Michigan. I think Notre Dame is good. You know, I can see people in the comments being like, oh, Doug said Sam Hartman was so good. I think Ohio State did a good job of taking that stuff away. Like, it wasn't there. It's just like the games, like last year with C.J. Stroud was like, wow, you guys did not even try to throw it deep. And Ryan Day would be like, what do you want us to do? There's 3 safeties standing 40 yards from the line of scrimmage, taking away all of that. Ohio State took it away. And then forced Sam Hartman, who like that's his instinct, to sort of be a little bit more of a dink and dunker. But, you know, he ripped some throws in the middle of the field. But also, if he was all that, they would have put the game away with a drive instead of getting a punt at the end. Even, you know, with like the screen pass that JT made a great play on and stuff. That's a put the game in the hands of your 6th-year quarterback, and he couldn't get it done. Yeah. And then put the hands in the game of your 4th start quarterback, and he did get it done. So head-to-head in the moment, we made the comparison on our show. Ryan Day made the same comparison. Sam Hartman to Stetson Bennett as a guy who's been around. They're not Trevor Lawrence. They're not Deshaun Watson, but they know how to beat you. And Sam Hartman couldn't do at the very, very, very end what Stetson Bennett could do last year. You know, it was 2 very good drives to put Notre Dame ahead, but like he had a last chance to do it and he didn't do it. So I do think Sam Hartman like wasn't as good as I kind of thought he would be in this game. I still think he's a good quarterback, but I think Ohio State made him not as good for the most part.
Yeah, he averaged like 7 yards per attempt, I think, in this game. I think they made him be something he doesn't want to be, which is a dink and dunk quarterback. I don't think that's where Sam Hartman thrives. So it's not about, you and I have different on Sam Hartman, right? But it's not about him or us, like, or you being wrong about how good of a player is. It's an acknowledgement that like Ohio State's defense, I think, had a good plan to limit the ways that limit the things that make Sam Hartman dangerous. Even if they couldn't get after him, they kind of mucked it up a little bit. I think it made it hard for him to throw the ball down the field. And he finished with, I'm looking at his game log now, like he was over 200 rating in every single game this year. And today he was at 140, like noticeably lower than every other game he's played. So while he had a good completion percentage at 68%, he didn't hurt them. Ohio State kept them from being dangerous.
So they will have to be better against Penn State. I mean, I had the Penn State-Iowa game on my TV while I was watching Ohio State and taking notes on my computer. And for a while, I was like, this is the same game. And then Penn State actually pulled away. And by the way, I said on the Monday show, Iowa would get shut out. Iowa got shut out.
They sure did.
They had like 100 yards of offense. Bry. There was a moment when the play calling was not going particularly well for Ohio State. And I was like, people are going to start calling him Brian Day. Like, that's where we are. If they don't figure this out. But then they won, so you can't call him Brian Day. And also you can't call him Brian Day because they scored more than 0. Penn State's pretty good, I think. I think Penn State, Iowa stinks offensively, but even like Iowa's defense couldn't hold up against Penn State today. Penn State is a lot like Michigan, that they are not a big play offense, but they like will run and then rip a throw, and then their defense really gets after you. I think Penn State and Michigan, and I watched the whole Michigan game today, and again, people can get lulled to sleep on Michigan. Michigan is legit. It's like they have a bad start, right? They give up 1 touchdown to Rutgers, and everyone's like, ooh, Michigan. And then it's like, oh, then Michigan just like scores on every other drive the rest of the game. Michigan and Penn State, I think, are excellent. And I think Penn State and Michigan are right now better than Ohio State.
I'm not ready to say that. Yeah.
Do you think they're better than Notre Dame?
I think Penn State and Michigan are better than Notre Dame. I think both of those teams could find themselves in a similar situation to which Notre Dame found themselves in today, which is they don't have a receiver who can threaten you. And you might need
I think
that
their
to beat Ohio
defenses
State.
are better. I think both their defenses are better than Notre Dame's.
They have Penn State for sure has a better ability to get after a passer than Notre Dame does. Michigan probably does as well. Both those defensive lines present more challenges than Notre Dame's does.
So I do think that where Ohio State is right now, I don't. This is not like a national championship or bust, like get on the train kind of situation. This is a little bit more of a grind it out and areas you have to improve. A year ago, when Ohio State beat Penn State, some people I think were critical of Ohio State in that game that it took them so long to sort of figure it out. And in that moment, I can very remember saying like I gave Ohio State I think a lot of credit because they ground it out. They kept working at it until they got to the point that they figured it out. And they figured it out by just throwing slants to Marvin Harrison Jr. against Joey Porter, and that was it, right? But like it wasn't pretty for the first 2.5 quarters. And this was a little bit like that. So I think in the end, some of the areas that held Ohio State back last year that did come home to roost. And if they don't get them fixed this year, they'll come home to roost. But I think it will ease the minds of Ohio State fans if you think of it a little bit more like that. They don't own the Big Ten right now. They are not the top dog. This is not like, I can't believe they got to grind. They have a new quarterback. They got to grind it out a little bit. And if you can just think of it as they're chasing Penn State and Michigan a little bit and figuring it out along the way, I think you appreciate a win like this more than if you take it as like, oh, we're Ohio State, we should blow everybody out. I can't believe we didn't play better.
I don't disagree with that. I would not say there's much of a gap between these three teams, and maybe that's enough, right? I didn't watch Penn State Iowa, so I'm box score analyzing at the moment. I don't like Drew Aller averaged less than 5 yards per completion. Katron Allen averaged less than 4 yards rushing. Nick Singleton averaged less than 3 yards rushing. How did Penn State win this game 31-0?
Did grinding it out.
So I'm not super impressed by either of those offenses. I think their defenses are very good. I think offensively those teams might have a little more in common with Notre Dame than we're perhaps giving them credit for, or giving Notre Dame
Iowa's
credit
defense
for.
is also excellent. They put 31 on them. Like I do think Iowa's defense is very good.
Yeah, there's always a baseline level of good there. I don't think they're the best version of themselves, but
and Iowa's defense was very good last year, and Ohio State put like 50 on them or whatever. Right?
Iowa had 4 first downs in that game.
It was as bad as you would think it would be with Brian Ferentz calling the plays.
Oh boy,
in the rain, in a whiteout. It was absolutely as bad as you thought it would be. Okay, it's a great win for Ohio State, and I'm not here to tell fans how to think. I'm here to suggest ways to make you feel happier about your team. And I think if you're just in a little more of like pursuit mode instead of defending something on top mode, you'll appreciate this win more. And you can view then the things they need to get better at as like, hey, we're building, as opposed to like, oh, we have all these holes. And it's all the same thing, but it's just how you look at it. But they haven't won the Big Ten the last 2 years. So, to be like, hey, Michigan's better than Ohio State, I don't think that's like a huge, like, that's not a crazy statement to make.
No.
So Michigan hasn't played anybody. Michigan hasn't played anybody. And Notre Dame's better than Iowa.
Michigan was farting around with Rutgers today, too, for a little bit.
They farted around for like one series.
It was 17-7 in the third quarter, and then Gavin Wimsatt threw the ball to Mike Sanders still.
I made an unbelievable. He made a great play. He didn't throw it to him. He ripped the ball out of the guy's arm and made like an unbelievable pick six.
What a screenplay, because Rutgers doesn't know how to throw the ball. I'm just saying, we're not living in a world where Michigan is firing on all cylinders and Ohio State's not. Michigan, if you want to say Michigan is better than Ohio State because of what's happened on the field the last 2 years and because they played well enough this year, I think that's true and fair. I don't look at Michigan and see like a juggernaut at the moment, nor do I see it with Penn State.
I think you're box score watching a little bit. Like their version of being
I watched Michigan. I watched all the Michigan game.
You didn't think they looked good after the first 10 minutes?
I think they looked like a team that was much better than Rutgers that was sleepwalking through a lot of that game. Rutgers can't throw the ball, and they ran it on Michigan for like the entirety of the first half.
Okay, we'll talk about it more on the Monday show. Michigan scored like on every drive. They just play slower.
They do play slow. They play slower than the Service Academy.
Michigan went punt, touchdown, missed field goal, touchdown, end of game. So like they only punted once. They only had 7 possessions. Anyway, Ohio State's in a good spot, and winning this game will put them in a better spot. So I think Ohio State fans can go celebrate this win. Ryan Day and the players can go celebrate this win, and everybody can make fun of Lou Holtz, which is just a fun thing to do.
Are there any octogenarians from Penn State and Michigan who can talk trash on Ryan Day before those games that get Ohio State in the right mind space?
No, maybe Lloyd Carr. Lloyd Carr's, I think, pretty nice though.
Yeah,
I don't think Lloyd Carr would like make a special appearance to say nasty things about Ohio State. You know what could happen is very popular. Let's do this because it's an easy costume. Very popular Halloween costume in Ohio this year. Lou Holtz.
Oh yeah,
wouldn't that be great? And then you just like go have some candy or whatever. Like just go put on glasses and like a little, little wispy wig and be Lou Holtz and say that every time someone opens up the door, just say like, you're not very tough.
There was when he said what he said about Ryan Day, he was being interviewed by someone on Pat McAfee show who was like dressed like Lou Holtz and talking like him. And the entire time I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, like, does Lou Holtz know that that's someone impersonating him, or does he think he's just talking to another crazy old man?
Yeah, or does he think he's just talking to his mirror, like he doesn't understand it? That was like the year that Jim Harbaugh. I thought Jim Harbaugh at Big Ten Media Days one year dressed like someone in a Jim Harbaugh Halloween costume. Like he wore like khakis and a tucked in blue shirt and glasses and a hat and was like, I'm Jim Harbaugh. And it's like, are you actually Jim Harbaugh? Is this your body double? Okay. That's a good win for Ohio State. We'll be back with Kings of the North on Monday, where we'll talk about all the Northern teams. We'll be back with Kings of Columbus on Wednesday, where we'll put more of Ohio State in context. For now, we certainly appreciate you guys hanging with us. So much more coverage coming on the podcast feed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platform. But Landis, you skipped. I've been to South Bend before. You skipped the chance to cover a game in South Bend so you could be with our loyal listeners and viewers here right after the game.
Yep, and I'm not regretting it at all. It actually turns out
Berm have to drive back and
but it turns out, no, I actually am regretting it. There was the only game this year that I was like bummed about not going to, but in the end, I think it worked out because a lot of the media rules that Notre Dame has there, I think like what would have prevented me from doing the live postgame show, like even from the press box. So then I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, no, it just would have been me, which would have been terrible. Yeah. So thanks for staying home, man.
Sure.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to all of our texters. I'm going to save some of the questions. Can I just say this? I told people, like, when it feels like the game is over, start firing questions. And one of the first one we got was, nah, that's a wrap. Good game. Hats off to Notre Dame. So that's where people were. I was like, save your questions until it feels like it's over. And that person was like, it's over. Ohio State lost. And so
I bet that person feels great. Excited. That's the best, man. When you just resign yourself to your team losing and then they pull it out of their butt to win. It's like the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. For Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises. Thanks to you guys for listening. That was the Postgame Show on the podcast.